In a farmhouse kitchen outside Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the stove is warming before sunrise. A woman stands beside it in a faded cotton apron, tied over a clean house dress. There is flour near one pocket, a clothespin caught in the seam, and a child at her knee. The screen door creaks. The hens are moving in the yard. The garden rows are wet with morning dew. Inside, a skillet handle is hot, a chair needs wiping, and breakfast will not wait. So she reaches for the thing already tied around her waist. Not because it was decoration, because in many American homes, Grandma's apron was a tool she wore. It was pocket, towel, basket, potholder, dust rag, signal flag, and comfort cloth. And the question behind all 25 of these small things is simple. What did Grandma keep close before modern life got so busy? Not just what she tucked into a pocket, what she carried through the day in cloth, motion, attention, and memory. 1. She carried eggs from the henhouse in the apron's gathered front. In many rural homes, there was not always a basket hanging exactly where she needed it. So she lifted the apron with both hands and made a soft cradle against her waist. One egg, then another, settled into the cloth. A cracked egg was more than a mess on the floor. It could mean breakfast changed, baking waited, or one less egg went into the pantry count. The apron became a moving nest between henhouse and kitchen table. That small trip tells the truth about older household life. The house did not run on endless extras. It ran on careful hands. 2. She gathered garden beans, peas, tomatoes, or windfall apples in that same apron. A few steps beyond the porch, supper might still be hanging on a vine. When the beans were ready, she did not always stop to fetch a basket or pail. She bent over the row, lifted the apron front, and let the vegetables collect there. By the time she came back inside, the cloth smelled of leaves, damp soil, and sun-warmed vines. This was not a romantic hobby for many families. It was the ordinary path from garden dirt to supper plate. The apron kept that path short. 3. She used one corner like a working hand towel. Flour, dishwater, chicken feed, garden dust, and sticky fruit all passed through her fingers. A towel might be across the room. The sink might be full. A child might be calling from the doorway. The apron was already there, ready for one quick wipe before the next thing needed doing. Modern kitchens keep paper towels on a roll and wipes under the sink. Grandma had a washable layer of cotton taking the day one mark at a time. The apron was not supposed to stay spotless. A clean apron at bedtime might mean it had not done much work. 4. She folded the apron corner around a hot pan handle when nothing else was close. Modern oven mitts and pot holders exist for good reason. Old kitchen habits were not always safe by modern standards. But historically, busy cooks often used the cloth already in reach. A thick fold could steady a cast iron skillet, shift a pie pan, or touch a warm stove door. The useful point is not copying every old method. It is understanding the kind of judgment those kitchens demanded. Too thin, and heat came through. Too loose, and the pan could slip. Grandma learned objects by weight, warmth, danger, and feel. 5. She used the apron to shoo chickens away from the porch steps. In homes where the yard, garden, and kitchen were close together, animals were part of daily traffic. A hen might scratch near the back door. A rooster might get bold around the feed pan. Grandma could flick the apron once or twice and send them moving without throwing a thing. That same cloth might wipe a child's face 5 minutes later. This is what made the apron feel almost alive in family memory. It could be gentle. It could be firm. It changed with whatever the house needed next. 6. She dusted flour from her dress with it before answering the door. Biscuit dough, pie crust, and breadwork left pale fingerprints across a kitchen. The apron protected the dress underneath, especially when clothing was washed, mended, and worn carefully. A house dress might be practical. A better dress had to be guarded for town, church, company, or Sunday dinner. Before stepping onto the porch, Grandma gave herself a few practiced pats. Flour came off the front. Crumbs fell away. In one motion, kitchen work became hospitality. The apron stood between labor and looking presentable. 7. She kept clothespins in the apron pocket on washday. That pocket became a little wooden toolbox before she stepped out to the clothesline. Sheets snapped in the wind. Work shirts hung heavy. A dropped pin could vanish in wet grass, mud, or gravel. So she reached to her hip without looking, pin after pin, as laundry went up. Before electric dryers became common in many homes, washday depended on weather sense. She watched the clouds. She felt the air. She knew whether those sheets would dry before evening damp settled in. The clothespins were small. The timing mattered. 8. She dried a child's tears with the cleanest corner she could find. Not every apron was clean all day. That is the honest truth. One corner might hold flour. Another might smell faintly of dishwater. Another might have garden dust from the bean row. But a grandmother knew which part was still fit for a cheek, a skinned knee, a scolded face, a child embarrassed in front of cousins. The apron came down gently, and the busy kitchen got quiet for one small moment. It was not a speech. It was not a medicine cabinet. It was cloth, closeness, and somebody stopping long enough to notice. That may be the thing people remember most. Not the eggs, not the beans, not the clothespins. The feeling that Grandma was never very far from what needed care. In many homes, the apron helped one woman move through the day without stopping to gather tools. A hot stove, a muddy garden, a crying child, a hen at the steps, a pocket full of pins, a dress worth protecting. It did not make the work easy. It made her ready. And that readiness was the quiet machinery behind breakfast, clean laundry, Sunday company, canned peaches, and children who felt watched over. Today, modern life often gives every small task its own product. One towel for this, one bag for that, one mitt, one wipe, one container, one organizer. There is comfort in that. There is safety in some of it too. But Grandma's apron reminds us that usefulness once had to be close at hand, tied at the waist, worn thin at the pocket, washed, patched, and put back on before the next morning's stove was warm. 9. She carried kindling in the apron when the stove or hearth needed feeding. Small sticks, bark chips, corn cobs, or dry splinters could ride against the front of her waist. A full armload was awkward when coffee was boiling and children were moving underfoot. So the apron became a quick sling between the porch pile, wood box, and stove door. In homes heated by wood, coal, or kitchen stoves, warmth was not background comfort. It was something somebody had to notice. Somebody had to see when the fire was falling. Somebody had to keep the next handful close. The apron did not make the heat. It helped keep the household close enough to tend it. 10. She used the apron to call people in for supper. A woman waving an apron from the porch was not always being dramatic. Across a yard, garden row, barn lot, or pasture edge, moving cloth could carry a message. Children knew play was over. A husband near the shed could read the signal. Older boys by the fence knew the food was on the table. Before every pocket held a phone, families watched familiar bodies for familiar signs. A raised hand meant one thing. An apron waved hard meant another. It was not magic. It was household language made from habit. 11. She wiped a chair before company sat down. A porch chair could hold road dust. A kitchen chair could have flour, crumbs, or a muddy fingerprint from a child's hand. A cane-bottomed chair might need only one quick pass before someone lowered themselves into it. When a neighbor, aunt, preacher, or salesman appeared, Grandma did not make a speech. She just gave the seat a wipe. She was not pretending the house had no work in it. The work was everywhere. It was in the dishwater, the stove heat, the cooling pie, and the laundry outdoors. That wipe said something plain. You are welcome here. I have made a place for you. 12. She hid her hands in the apron when she felt shy, tired, or unsure. Old family photographs often show women standing with hands folded into the apron front. That posture could mean modesty. It could mean rest. It could mean embarrassment, patience, or one quiet breath before answering a room. Hands told the truth in working homes. They showed dishwater cracks, garden dirt, flour, burns, age, and effort. Tucking them into the apron gave a woman a small shield. The same cloth that carried eggs could also carry silence. In a crowded kitchen, silence might be the only privacy she had. 13. She kept a safety pin, needle packet, or bit of thread in the pocket. A loose button could slow a school morning. A torn strap could make overalls or a dress hard to wear for the day. Many women kept small fixes close because clothing was expected to last. The apron pocket was not the sewing basket. It was the emergency drawer worn at the waist. A pin bought time. A needle handled what could not wait. A short piece of thread could keep a shirt, curtain, apron, tie, or child's hem going longer. Modern life often turns a tear into a purchase. Grandma often turned it into a pause, a stitch, and a return to work. 14. She carried a handkerchief folded soft from many washings. It could wipe a nose, dab sweat, cover a cough, or clean a smudge from a child's face. Paper tissues became common over time, but washable cloth stayed familiar in many households. A handkerchief in an apron pocket was not sentimental at first. It was simply ready. It could be rinsed, dried, folded, and used again. That was the hidden economy of the house. Not money in a bank. Usefulness stored in drawers, pockets, jars, and habits. 15. She held potato peelings, bean strings, eggshells, or apple scraps until she carried them out. Kitchen waste often had a destination before it had a plastic bag. Some scraps went to chickens. Some went to a compost heap. Some might be saved for broth, depending on the household and the meal. The apron helped move those little leavings from table to bucket without extra trips. A kitchen was not only a place where food appeared, it was a working system. What came off the cutting board might still belong somewhere else. Grandma knew the difference between trash and something not finished being useful. 16. She carried a recipe card, grocery note, or folded letter in the pocket. A woman might move from pantry shelf to cellar steps to porch without wanting to lose the paper. The recipe card could have grease at the edge and penciled changes in the margin. A grocery note might list flour, coffee, salt, thread, lamp wicks, or canning lids. A letter could be read twice between chores, then tucked away when someone called. The apron pocket kept paper close in a house full of motion. It was not an office. It was memory with a string tied around it. 17. She brushed crumbs into the apron after a meal when the table needed clearing fast. Breadcrumbs, biscuit flakes, cornbread bits, and pie crust could be gathered with one practiced hand. The apron caught what would otherwise scatter across floorboards. Then she could step to the scrap bucket, stove, or chicken yard. The cleanup was quick, physical, and ordinary. It did not require a gadget. It required knowing where the mess should go next. A good housekeeper did not simply make things disappear. She moved them into the right part of the household cycle. That is the pattern running through the apron. It was cloth placed exactly where daily life kept happening. At the waist, between the hands and the work, between the kitchen and the yard, between company at the door and flour still on the table. Modern life often promises freedom by hiding chores from view. Laundry tumbles behind a door. Food arrives trimmed, wrapped, and ready. Heat comes when the thermostat clicks. Messages travel without anyone stepping onto the porch. There is comfort in that. No one should pretend every old chore was charming. But when the work became invisible, some judgment disappeared with it. Grandma's apron reminds us how much a person once noticed in a single morning. The dampness of clothes on the line, the heat in a skillet handle, the difference between scraps for chickens and scraps for the trash. The child who was not crying loudly, but still needed the corner of a cloth. That was not nostalgia painted pretty. That was household attention, tied in a bow behind the back. 18. She used the clean apron corner to shield bread, biscuits, or a bowl of dough. A pan cooling near an open window needed watching in warm weather. Flies came through loose screens. Dust drifted in from dirt roads, porch steps, and open kitchen doors. Before every kitchen had plastic wrap or sealed containers for everything, cloth did quiet guarding. An apron corner could cover a loaf or protect a plate saved for someone late. It was not fancy. It was close, washable, and already in her hands. The food was not abandoned. It was watched over by the same fabric that helped make it. 19. She carried salve, a small bottle, or simple medicine from room to room, not as a nurse in a white uniform. As the household person everyone called first. A child's cough, a scraped elbow, cracked knuckles after chores, a neighbor at the back door with a burn or headache. Many homes kept basic remedies in a cabinet, pantry, or little tin on a shelf. Grandma might tuck one small item into her apron pocket while still tending supper. Modern medicine is safer and better in many ways. The point is not to copy every old remedy. The point is that someone noticed early, moved calmly, and stayed close. 20. She held seed packets when the garden rows were being planted. Those paper packets from a hardware store, feed store, or seed catalog were easy to lose. Spring wind could carry them across the yard. Damp soil could ruin them. Beans, radishes, lettuce, onions, and maybe flowers along the edge if there was room. The apron pocket kept them dry enough and close enough while she bent over the row. For many working families, a garden was not decoration. It was a pantry that had not become food yet. The apron carried that future in folded paper. 21. She wiped dust from a windowsill, lamp chimney, side table, or porch rail. A visit could happen with little warning. A cousin might come up the walk. A neighbor might stop by. The preacher, delivery man, or salesman might appear at the gate. The house did not have to be perfect, and usually it was not. But a quick wipe said the place was cared for. In homes with wood stoves, coal heat, open windows, and dirt roads nearby, dust was constant. Grandma fought it in passing, one small surface at a time. A windowsill, a chair arm, the top of a jelly jar on the pantry shelf. Care often looked like nothing more than one quick swipe before someone noticed. 22. She carried scraps of worn cloth after cutting them into patches. A frayed shirt cuff, a flour sack remnant, a dress no longer fit for wearing, a child's torn knee waiting for repair. Fabric was not thrown away simply because its first job had ended. It might become a quilt square, pocket patch, doll dress, or wiping rag. The apron front could hold those pieces until they reached the sewing basket. That was the hidden economy of cloth. Usefulness did not end all at once. It changed shape. 23. She gathered the little things children left behind. Jacks, buttons, marbles, hair ribbons, a wooden spool, or a toy car under the chair. Instead of making a special trip each time, she dropped them into the apron pocket. Later, those small things found their way back to a cigar box, dresser drawer, or child's hand. The apron pocket was not neat in the modern organizer sense. It was temporary order, a soft holding place for the evidence of a family living close together. The house did not become orderly all at once. It was rescued in handfuls. 24. She used the apron as a modest shield when answering the door. If her dress was stained, if her hands were wet, if she had been leaning over a washtub, it helped. She could smooth the apron down, tuck her hands, and step into the doorway with dignity. Working women were often expected to keep a home presentable while doing work that made presentation difficult. That contradiction lived right on the front of the apron. It was armor made of cotton, not hard armor, human armor, the kind that let a woman meet the world without apologizing for the labor that fed it. 25. She took the apron off at the end of the day, and that may have been its final job. The knot came loose behind her back. The fabric dropped from her waist, holding flour, dust, smoke, smell, garden dirt, crumbs, and small evidence. Maybe there were still clothespins inside. Maybe a folded note, maybe one bean she missed, maybe a safety pin, a marble, or a piece of thread forgotten in the pocket. That apron could tell the story of the day better than any diary. It showed what had spilled, ripened, broken, cried, burned, and been carried. Then it went to the wash, or hung on a nail near the kitchen door, waiting for morning. That is why the apron remains so powerful in American memory. Not because it was quaint, not because every grandmother was the same, and not because the old days were easier. They were not. The apron remains because it gathered the work of care into one visible thing. Eggs from the henhouse, beans from the garden, kindling for the stove, pins for the clothesline, a handkerchief for a child's face, seed packets for spring, scraps of cloth that still had another life waiting. Each thing was ordinary by itself. Together, they made a household run. Modern life has given us many good things: safer stoves, better medicine, cleaner heating, machines that spare backs, hands, and time. No honest memory should turn difficulty into decoration. But the old apron asks a question worth keeping. What did Grandma keep close before modern life got so busy? She kept whatever needed doing next. And more than that, she kept awareness close. She knew which corner was clean, which pan was hot, which child had gone quiet, which scraps still had use, which dress needed protecting, which visitor deserved a wiped chair. The apron was never really about cloth. It was readiness made visible. A life tied close to the work, close to the family, and close to small emergencies that never made history books. That is why so many people still remember it. A faded apron hanging near the kitchen door was never just something Grandma wore. It was the shape of her day,